I'm gonna go ahead and get started. There you go. So hello everybody, and thanks for joining us for our very final financial boot camp. We're so happy to have you all here. This is our last Monday that we'll be spending together. So next Monday we'll have to come up with something else to do. Anyway, my name once again is Carol. I'm the president and CEO of the Whittier Chamber. And, tonight really is all about you and some of the things that you may need to work through on the financial side of things, or questions you may have, or clarification on any of the topics that Mike and Steve and Max have presented in our 3 prior weeks. So we are really thrilled to partner with the Long Beach SBDC to offer these workshops to, help you build a better business. So I would like to thank our corporate sponsor, Friendly Hills Bank, and particularly new president and CEO, Nathan Rogge, and executive vice president, Liz Buckingham, for their support of this event. Really appreciate it so much. Friendly Hills Bank has local branches in Whittier and Santa Fe Springs, and offers a personalized approach to banking. They're awesome there. Their experienced bankers have a wealth of in-market knowledge and are committed to building relationships, not only with individuals, but also small and medium-sized businesses as well. And so to introduce our concept for today, which is really a Q&A, I'm gonna throw it over to Brad from the Long Beach SBDC. And Brad, let's go ahead and kick things off.
Well, thank you, Carol. I appreciate it, and as always, thank you to you and to Rick and to Quan and the whole Whittier Chamber team for just making this go so smoothly. Much appreciated, and thanks, big time to Friendly Hills Bank. Very, very much appreciated. This is, as you were saying, Carol, this is the 4th of 4 parts of this financial boot camp series that we've held over the last few weeks. And the idea, just to give you a quick recap, we've sort of built it from the bottom up, with business advisor Steve Richardson talking about some fundamentals of a small business, and that then segued into business advisor Mike Huntley talking about the understanding your financials and really demystifying a lot of the language of financials. And that led to business advisor Max Ordonez talking about how to secure a loan. And the idea behind all of this is to really make it as clear as possible that, first of all, anybody can understand their financials as business owners. It just takes patience and understanding that you can ask questions of advisors like us or other folks who are familiar with the language of financials. But the key thing is to know that being on top of your financials is really should be at the top of your priorities when you're running your business. And we want to make it so that you can ask any questions you'd like about your business, especially in this series talking about your financials. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is just opening up to you, and we'll get to each of you individually to answer any questions you might have, maybe questions you didn't necessarily think of when you were listening to Steve, or when you were listening to Mike, or when you were listening to Max, but that you might want to ask this evening. We're happy to offer whatever information we can. And at the end, I'll put up a slide that will explain how to register with the SBDC as a client, so you can have some sessions with Steve or Mike or Max or all of them. It's at no cost to you. So I thought the way we would start is just starting with you, Steve, as you think about the class that you taught, which was about the fundamentals of a business. As you kind of reflect on the class, what would you say are some sort of key highlighted points that you'd really like people to kind of remember as a result of what you were talking about in that class?
Well, thanks, Brad. Just to remind everybody, since it was 4 weeks ago, we had 3 main things that are the fundamentals of any business: people, profit, and product. And I think what I'd like the group to really remember is that it's like juggling 3 balls. you're sometimes needing to look at your profitability. Sometimes you're spending most of your day with managing people or reaching out to customers or having conversations with vendor. There are other days when you're really looking at your product. Can I get enough product? Is my product the right type of product? Do I need to add product? And the secret of running a business is leading and managing those three different areas and keeping them in balance. When we run it, we get into trouble when one of those things get out of balance. And so I would just like everyone to kind of have as a final thought that it's always people, profit, and product, but it's juggling them correctly and keeping them in balance is the key.
That makes a lot of sense. So let me just pause there, because I know that we have Alejandra and we have Jessica, and let's see, who else do we have?
Juan and Christy.
Oh, great. So do you have any questions for Steve about what he was talking about when it came to product, or let's see, Christy's in. Is there, based on what Steve was just talking about, do any questions come to mind? If not, we can move forward, but I don't want to move forward if you have some questions for Steve based on what he was talking about this evening or what he was talking about 4 weeks ago. Anything come to mind? Because if not, I'll continue to move on. Maybe we can come back to Steve. All right, awesome. But I believe that focusing on the fundamentals of what constitutes your business in a consistent way, where you're balancing those three areas, like Steve was talking about, is an ongoing reality in operating a business, and very important to be cognizant of. Which then leads into Mr. Mike Huntley, who, Mike, you talked about really understanding the language of financials. And what would you say, as you reflect on what you were talking about, would be a few highlights for folks to kind of be thinking about?
Well, I think the main thing that I hope people took from the webinar that I did was that, no offense, Max, but I think accountants use different terms for common things just to confuse us non-accountants and create jobs for themselves, right? So that was kind of the theme of my talk, right? And I tried to explain that if you understand the basic financial reports, a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, or a cash flow model, in the same terms as you understand your personal finance, your checkbook, it's not so overwhelming. And that's the main thing, the main theme that I hope you take away, that you're not overwhelmed when your bookkeeper or your CPA or even yourself runs your reports at the end of a month or the end of a year, and you're looking at a profit and loss statement and going, oh my God, I don't even get this. I'm just going to look at the bottom number. Because what we did in my class was, within a matter of a few minutes, I got you to be able to use the information in a profit and loss sheet to make an intelligent business decision, right? So don't be overwhelmed by the reports or the terms. I take a practical approach to everything. And I think a lot of the other advisors that, work with me at the SBDC have the same approach, right? And so rely on us. We'll be happy to. I have had a number of clients that have, after they've taken my class, then they get their financial reports. They kind of understand what's going on, but then they'll reach out to me and say, okay, here's my reports. Help me understand what these reports are telling me about my business. And those are the kind of things that we could do for you, outside of this class, or if you've got specific questions, we're happy to take them tonight.
Mike, have you found in your experience, and this actually goes out to Steve and to Max as well, are there particular areas that seem to be more confusing to your clients than others? In other words, is it the balance sheet? Is it profit and loss? Is it cash flow? What is it that seems to sometimes be a little bit more confusing to business owners?
I think initially the balance sheet is a little harder to understand because you don't use it as often, and it's in some ways, I mean, it's accounting, so it's not a nebulous concept, but the concept of the assets of your business, the liability of your business, and how much equity you have in the business tends to be a bit of a difficult concept for some people to understand. And so that's why my approach there was not to be morbid, but it's what your heirs get, right? To boil it down to a practical understanding. Profit and loss statement, I think, is easier for people to grab because they typically go to the bottom number to see if it's positive or negative. And I think when we explain it as a score sheet, like, you know, for a sporting event, that makes it easier to understand.
Yeah, I would probably add that in my experience in working with clients on the profit and loss, many clients seem to have a difficulty understanding what should actually go under cost of goods or services as opposed to their fixed expenses.
Right.
And so helping them understand what a direct cost is for them to produce a sale versus their standard monthly rent or telephone cost is sometimes an area. And the other one is the cash flow.
Yeah.
That people sometimes have a difficulty in understanding that the cash flow is how much cash you actually deposit in the bank, not how much you invoice, not how much showed up for a recorded sale, but it's the cash that you have. And so I know with my clients that we have spent a good deal of time making certain that we understand those differences.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you made the point when you taught your class or questions for me that the connection between a profit and loss statement and a cash flow statement, right? That people, well, I'm making money on my profit and loss statement. How come I don't have any cash, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I think one of the things we all need to think about, and that's everybody on here, is that transition, the very important transition from where we, and I speak to myself too, because we're all have our own businesses as well. Mike does, and Steve, and everybody else. Is an important transition when we go from being a sole proprietorship, where we're on our tax returns, we file a Schedule C, which is kind of a profit and loss from a tax standpoint, right? And we don't do a balance sheet. And when many of our clients go from being a sole proprietor, now they're a corporation where they have to report a balance sheet. That's an important transition because, for example, working with someone just last week, they have a beautiful little manufacturing business locally here. And in that transition, they had about $300,000 worth of some very valuable CNC equipment to manufacture parts, et cetera. And in their balance sheet, they did not have any of those assets on there. And even to that point, they didn't even owe any money on those. They had paid them, and they had the loans. So the business in itself had a very strong balance sheet. They had some net worth they built over, and lenders are also looking at that. What's the historical aspect of it? And I know we talked about, and I think Mike was very good about talking about that profit and loss and balance sheet from a historical standpoint. But from a lending standpoint now, in this marketplace now, we have to take some of that historical data, and now they want to see how it's going to look in the future. So that's the forecasting part. So we could say exactly what Steve Richards put together, right? And I'm going to change my slide because I'm taking a lot from the last 4 weeks. One, I always put product, profit, and people way at the end as an appendix of resumes. And I'm like, wait a minute. Steve is right. I should really put the people because it's you guys. It's Christy, it's Alejandra, Yesenia, Jessica. You guys have the experience, the background, and this is really the strongest point, that whether you're starting or you're an existing business, that's the strongest point. And then what the product and services that you're using your leadership and cultural skills to implement. And then from there, you could create the profits for your company. So that's, for me, a lesson learned from this, just from doing the presentations. I'm like, Steve's right. It's people first. It's the key people in this group. So I'm going to change my presentation and really put that up front And really, you guys are the showcase. We have to showcase your background and what you've accomplished. Along with that, how does the financial statement speak to your accomplishments? The balance sheet is a historical earnings of your company, what you built, right? Those assets, that net worth. I think that speaks to what you've accomplished and what you put in to your business. Let the financials tell that story, right? The numbers. They're more than numbers. They're telling a story. Like Brad always talks about, we have to always tell our story, right? Of our business. But the numbers do tell a story. So we do have to remember that part. I think that's something that I was thinking about the last few months, and I got that from this. So I'm learning as we're moving along, we're learning as well. And lastly, it's just the forecast piece is the future of how the financial statements look. We're not going to know exactly how it look, but based on what we know today, based on our estimates, based on the history, based on maybe contracts you may have may have signed or will be signing, we could look at your business where it would be. And that's exactly why we need to know. Then our cash flow statement, which Mike talks about, is very important because we're going to need to know, is there going to be a need for cash? Is there going to be a gap? If there is, that forecast could tell us that story.
On that note, do you, well, this is for all three of you. The reality for some of the clients that we have and some of the businesses we interact with is that there's not necessarily an understanding at a given moment if my business is profitable, or I don't necessarily know what the margins are that I should have. Do you, Max or Steve or Mike, do you have a point of view about if I'm a business owner and I want to really keep on top of knowing whether or not I am profitable? What are some basic steps I should be taking to be on top of that?
Well, I have a definite opinion on this, and so my two friends are probably already smiling. I think everybody ought to be producing some sort of monthly report in terms of what their profit and loss is and where their position is, how much they're leaving to their heirs on a monthly basis on that balance sheet. I also think on a monthly basis, we need to know what our cash position is. And so when I do forecasting exercises with people, it's looking at each month. When I suggest any type of bookkeeping program, I'm suggesting that if they're using a bookkeeping service or doing it themselves, that they produce a monthly P&L, a monthly balance sheet, a monthly cash flow report. Because I just don't believe you can manage a business without looking at it at least monthly.
Okay, good to know. Mike, do you have a point of view?
I completely agree with Steve, right? And I think what I've seen with a number of clients is, this is going to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm really not. I think before they've taken my class or Steve's or even Max's class, they don't understand what the report is telling them. So they have a tendency to not run that report once a month because I don't really understand it, right? Then when they get a basic understanding of what the report's telling them and how they can use it to manage their business, it's easier for them to get in the habit of running those reports monthly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other important thing is also when we're working with clients, once they understand what we're looking at or looking for, when we start doing quarterly reviews with them to see how the business is progressing, we're at least using the same language. We are at least starting to look at the same things so that we can get to the core of where we need to grow or the next steps we need to take more quickly.
Do you run into situations with clients who feel that because sales are good, that because sales are good, they feel that they're profitable?
All the time. all the time. Oh, we had a great April. We had a great net profit. And I can just ask the simple question. So how much money do you have in the bank? They may or may not know.
Right.
If I ask them, so you had a great April, what's May look like? What do you think you're going to do in May? And many times the answer is, I hope what we did in April, which is the wrong answer, by the way.
Right.
I think, today, this morning, I had a meeting with a restaurant, and they used to buy the case of eggs for $17. The case of eggs today costs $72. And then my next question was,
Wow.
when was the last time you raised the prices on your menu?
Mhm.
And they kind of looked back in their notes, and they have some notes. So, oh, that was last year, August. So I go, you've been operating in the last 10 months, and you haven't raised your prices. And they're going right into their peak season, June, July, August, and part of September. And the first thing they did is have to raise their prices at the end of the day today. There's just no way around it. If they want to continue to be as profitable as they were. And their marketplace is a good marketplace. They're going to be able to pass, not a lot, but some of it on, because if they're and then as we're going to begin doing the forecast, their net income is probably going to be a little bit lower than last year. And they said they're okay with that. They're okay with that because they want to keep their customers.
So Max, let's unpack that for a second. If you hadn't walked in and sat down with them, there they are, they're paying crazy prices for eggs compared to what they were paying a year ago. What document would they have looked at? Would it have been the P&L? Would it have been cash flow? What would they have, how could they have figured this out without you?
Well, even before that conversation was exactly what Steve said. And that's why Steve's comment triggered my mind, because they said, oh, sales were up last sales. I go, so how are your sales compared May to May? And they do keep track of sales because the point of sale system, the credit card machine, they could do a report. May was this amount and last May was the same amount, but without the price increases, there's no way you're going to have the same net income as last year. It's just impossible. So in there, again, thinking top line, right? Oh, we're doing fine. Our sales are just as strong this year as they were last year. That was where the conversation started.
Yeah, that's.
Can I make a comment to that on that subject? So I think what I find with a lot of clients is that there is a lot of fear around raising their prices. They feel like they can't raise their prices because they won't be competitive. I think a lot of small business owners have a mentality, have a vision in their mind. If I raise my prices, my customers will go away, my sales will drop, I'll go out of business. I mean, I'm not, in their mind, those are the dots that get connected by raising their prices, right? And I think what ends up happening with somebody like Steve or Max or myself coaching them through it, it makes it easier. Oftentimes what I see with clients is when they do raise prices, with a lot of businesses, their sales go up, not just because they're charging more for their product, people are buying more for whatever reason, right? So the scenario of raising my prices, my sales will drop, I'll go out of business. I have yet to see that happen. Now, the other thing with prices, and it depends on the product or service, but I think where you can really solidify the relationship with your customers is right now we're in a time where there's a lot of inflation. So the case of eggs going from $17 to $72. First of all, I hope the chicken's got a raise, but I mean, so it justifies them raising a price. But if you can do it, if that $72 a year from now for a case of eggs goes to $55, give something back to your clients. Drop the prices where you can. It doesn't always have to go up if you can do that.
Max said something that I think I want to hop on. Max was talking about a POS system, and we have lots of clients who use points of sale systems. But what most of them don't understand is while it can record the sales, it records no cost. And so you're either going to have to go physically grab a receipt and compare your receipts, or you're actually handling your cost in some sort of bookkeeping spreadsheet format. And so many clients just say, oh, look at I have a POS report and it gives us nothing but sales. So we have no cost management whatsoever out of a POS system as a rule.
So let me pause here for a moment. I don't know. So Christy or Jessica or Yesenia or Alejandra, based on what we're talking about, does any of this apply to any of you? Do you care to share anything? There are no such thing. There's no such thing as a dumb question, but I'm just interested in knowing if in your businesses or your situations you've encountered any of the things that we're talking about, from understanding whether or not you're profitable to challenges with POS systems. I just want to make sure we're remembering to include Alejandra and Christy and Jessica and Yesenia in the conversation. But if not, we'll keep going. Okay, just know that you're welcome to ask questions. So on that note, let's suppose the eggs go from 17 to 72. I know that. How do I figure out how much to raise my prices? Is that a complicated calculation? That might be
No,
what.
no, it's not. It's not a complicated calculation, but I'm going to make one presupposition. I'm going to assume for this particular example that we're primarily we serve breakfast only. Mm-hmm. Okay, for this illustration. And so every meal has eggs pretty much. And so it's simply a task then of deciding how many meals on average do we serve a day at our current retail pricing. And then we start looking at what our cost was before the eggs went up and what our margin was. Now, we may not be able to increase it to full margin to cover this drastic cost in egg prices, but that gives us the basis for how we're going to adjust our retail pricing based on the average number of breakfast we serve each day and what our cost is.
And then once you know that, the next step is ultimately the market's going to set the price. So looking and seeing what your competition is charging for a comparable breakfast, right? You can't go from a $12 breakfast to a $50 breakfast if everybody else is selling the breakfast for $15, right? So
right. But chances are everybody else is paying more for eggs unless they have their own chickens in the backyard.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is that you're selling your breakfast for 12, but chances are your competition's selling their breakfast for 14.
Yeah, I think
because they figured out that multiple based on the number of breakfasts they serve is covering their additional cost.
Yeah, got it. I mean, I think this is a very important point, because look at what's happening. What if, with the price of gasoline, for example, what if I'm in the trucking business and I'm used to charging X to go to do whether it's a short haul or long haul? How do I keep up? Because the price of gas, and then I mean it goes into many different industries. But I know, Mike, you and I have talked a lot with folks who are in the trucking business, and just keeping on top of those costs and then being able to actually make a profit as a result is not an easy thing to do.
No, and the other point related to this topic of raising prices and going back to Steve's paradigm of people and profit and product is trying to be creative with the egg supplier. I mean, if you think about their price to you went from $17 to $72. Well, their costs that have gone up, maybe it's the fuel charge to deliver the eggs to you. Maybe they're not that far away and you could go pick up your own eggs. Maybe you can get a better price if your business is stable and you say, look, how about I give you a commitment for 2 months worth of eggs? Would you give me a better price? Right? So it's all about the gap between your cost and your price. So if your prices are going up, you can also try to do something on your cost side to try to keep it down, which is working on the profit side of Steve's triangle.
I'm building chicken coops in my backyard, so.
That's good. That's good. Very entrepreneurial of you. Very entrepreneurial. Hey, Max, on the lending side, when lenders look at all the loan documents and all the financial projections and such, do out of, let's say, the balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow, are there any particular statements out of those three that the lenders really pay close attention to more than others, or are they all equally scrutinized?
Last year total, and they want to look at what's currently in 2022 as much as possible that you may have. So you always want to be on top of that, but I think Steve mentioned that earlier. Have those monthlies completed. We're ready on June 13th. Most people should have April by now, right? It's a month and a half later, but you should be working on May or having it ready very soon. They ask because if you can only provide January, they're like, wait a minute, you want me to lend you money, but you don't even know where you're at financially as of April or May. I don't know, it just sends a message. It's just, again, a management discipline message. I really believe that. It sends that message that you're not on top of your numbers.
And using that as an example, let's suppose that January example, you got January numbers, but you don't have February, March, April. In your experience, is there a reason for that? Is it because the business doesn't have a bookkeeper? Is it because the owner doesn't really understand how to do the number? What is holding people back?
It could be they change bookkeepers, or a family member used to do it and they got sick. I mean, things like that sort.
Sure.
But yeah, we should make sure that try to have everything as up to date as much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to have, maybe you don't have May, but as long as you have April, that's still good. So that's something to think about. And they may ask for bank statements to reflect that story. That don't be surprised now. It's going to get more document requirement heavy than before.
Right.
Especially for some industries, going to be very, even more so than others, probably.
Well, the thing that I want folks to take away from this is it's definitely something that we all need to keep on top of. That is our financials, but it's not an impossible thing to do. This is the key thing for everybody to understand. It's not impossible to keep on top of it. There's plenty of help out there. And I'm not talking about just the SBDC. I'm talking about bookkeepers. I'm talking about accountants. I'm talking about, just experienced folks. And, if you're not comfortable, we work with a lot of clients that are very creative, have very interesting creative operations, but they themselves aren't necessarily comfortable with numbers. That's okay. You don't have to feel isolated. There's help out there. And the key thing is to ask for it, So Max, just a little bit more on the lending side. So when you were teaching your class, I was asking about just what the climate is out there. And you're talking about how things are definitely tougher, correct?
Yeah, I mean, as far as maybe a little bit more documentation, yes, I guess. And I think it's some industries may be a little bit more difficult than others right now.
Yeah. So
we're having a lot of companies, because of COVID, 21, last year, 2021, 2020 were not as stellar as 19. So we're showing them 19. This is where we are. This is where we're going to look at for this year. And maybe there'll be some flexibility to that. Maybe. I can't, I'm hoping. But if we could tell the story and say, look, we're looking more like 19. This is why. Take a look at my year-to-dates through May or through April and what my forecast is forecasting based on these assumptions or based on these new contracts that I have signed. And maybe that then it becomes your story becomes a little stronger.
Right. I was reading, I can't remember if you guys know Wayne Slavitt, who
I know what.
He just wrote a book called, Run It Like You Sell It, like you're going to sell it. And his point of view is that you want to operate your business as if you were going to sell it at some point. And so you want to have all of your ducks in a row to the degree that that's possible. And his point of view is that it adds a sort of discipline in your life as a business owner to really focus on having your financials together and understanding them, not because you should be waking up every day thinking you're going to sell your business, but the point being that if you do get to a point, if that's part of your long-term strategy to sell the business, you're going to want to have all of your ducks in a row in order to make that possible, to make your business appealing to a buyer. Do you gentlemen, do you agree with that point of view?
I totally agree with it. Yeah, I think it's a good, it keeps a good perspective. I used to, because I was a turnaround guy, I used to tell people all the time, run your business like you're turning it around. Like you have 100 days to turn it around, and it changes your attitude, changes your disciplines. And I think that that's exactly what the gentleman is saying, to run your business like you're getting ready to sell it. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I'm going to tell him that you said that, because he would be happy to know that, so. How about you, Quan? Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments on for the good of the chapter?
I think you guys are right on. Ratios are key important things, especially for small businesses, not just cost of goods, but now with the interest rate going up a full 100 basis points over the weekend, it's going to affect, your borrowing capacity, and it's increase your expenses on paying back that loan. So, you got to stay on top of the ratios. Some of the things that I would recommend is, cost to sales. What does it cost to run your business as to what the rate, what are you generating on revenues? And if you don't know that, and if it's moving and that ratio is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, something's not right. And you do have to pivot. So yeah, you guys are right on. I think great advices from all four of you.
Well, that's
I do have an interesting story on cost management, if everybody'd like to hear it. This is way back in the 80s. And so during that time, I owned a roofing company, and we got hit by two very unusual things. Liability insurance for the prior year cost me about $30,000. For the next year, it immediately jumped to $85,000 a year for liability insurance. Workman's comp for roofers is very high anyway. We were paying about $11 per 100 for every roofer. It jumped to almost $18 per roofer. Now, you would normally think, oh my gosh, they're out of business. Well, no, we weren't out of business, but what it forced us to do, there was no way that we could underwrite the workman's comp. So we started putting workman's comp as a separate line item in all of our bids, because when you own a roofing company, you bid, and we basically did new construction. What we did do, though, in our margins, which were tight anyway, we did do a small percentage increase to help cover the increased liability. But the facts of life are we could not be competitive in our bidding and cover the entire cost of liability insurance. And so the liability insurance definitely caused our net profitability until we could adjust. And it took about a 2-year period to adjust that. And so sometimes we are faced with some difficult cost management things. with things that are hit out of the blue that literally we have absolutely no control over. You know, but there are ways. You just have to think about, how do we remain competitive? What's the baseline that we have to do, and still allow ourselves to function and run our business at a profit level that we can live with for the time being. Just an interesting story
Yeah.
back from the 80s.
No, that is interesting. The 1980s.
That would be the 1980s.
I'm just
and not
checking.
the
I'm just
1880s. Thank you very
I'm
much.
asking questions. I'm just asking questions. I'm not here to cast aspersions.
For Steve's purposes, that rate of $18 back in 1980s is now $60 per 100, 60%. So every $60 you're paying on top of the payroll you're paying the employee. So, you know, take insurance into fact. Gasoline prices pretty much double since December. So those are things that every business that has auto expenses should factor in, because it's going to eat into your net profit.
Yeah, and what?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm not in the roofing business anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like brutal, man. It sounds tough.
For insurance guys, that's actually good.
Yeah, you're on the wrong side of the roofing business, Steve.
Evidently.
But with what you're talking about, what Quan's talking about, my hope is that you know, as business owners who are listening now to this conversation, who might be listening to it in the future through the recording, will recognize that it's challenging, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I don't understand where I am. The costs are skyrocketing. How do I keep on top of it? What should I be doing? But one of the things that I thought was interesting that you said, Mike, when we were talking about the eggs going from 18 to 72, or 17 to 72, is maybe, you know, being creative and negotiating with vendors. You know, that might not necessarily be something that business owners think about. You know, okay, how do we work together to make these numbers work, as opposed to just saying, okay, it is what it is. That's the cost. That's the rising price. That's where it is. There's no possible conversation about it. I found that interesting that you said that, Mike.
And every business has competitors, right? And maybe with the egg supplier, maybe there are other egg suppliers, right? Maybe there are up and comers. Maybe the $72 a case guy has the largest market share and has dominated this market forever. And maybe there's an up and comer who's willing to take a lower margin and sell you eggs at $60 a case, right? So he starts to get his foot into your business and start to build a relationship with you. You don't know until you ask and you look around.
Yeah. Well, let me come back to, let's just see if Alejandra or Christy or Yesenia, if you have any questions before we kind of wrap things up. I hope that this has been helpful. It's certainly been helpful to me, I'll tell you that much. And I'm getting out of the trucking business and the roofing business right now. That's it. It's over.
I'm going to become a chicken, actually.
That's right. I'm going to go into the chicken business.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. I'm on my spin bike.
Are you multitasking right now?
Yes.
Good for you, Jessica.
I'm a mom. I'm trying to get multiple things done right now. I have a question. So I had met with Mike last week. We reviewed my financials, and I feel like I'm at a crossroads right now. I'm making pretty much the same amount sales wise, which is like 100K. But my cost is like ridiculous. My cost is very high. So we talked about ways to lower it. But I kind of feel like I'm at a crossroads where either I figure it out and lower my cost, or I go like a completely different route.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump on and then you guys can add to this as well. So she designs and produces women's clothing, denim, t-shirts, has some really cool designs and a lot of her patches and things are coming from China. So the cost of her materials going up. She has high quality t-shirts and denim, so she doesn't want to compromise on the quality and buy a cheaper t-shirt. And her costs are going up, but her market is not the high-end customers. It's middle level customers that want to have high-end looking fashion, right, Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So she's kind of limited on how much she can raise prices, but her costs are going up as much as the eggs that Max talked about. Yeah. So like she says, we talked about ways to try to compensate for the cost going up. You know, one of the suggestions was focusing on denim because she sells more denim. The margins are a little better on denim. But I'm wondering, you know, as she's asking, I'm not your spokesperson, but you know, you have other ideas how she can address this situation?
Well, the thing that first comes to mind is talking about not compromising, because so Jessica, it sounds like you have, you know, high quality clothing that you're selling, and but it's not necessarily to the Rodeo Drive crowd.
Yeah, no, we're not quite Gucci.
but it's
way below that.
So
but I would say, yeah, go ahead.
It's quality.
Mm-hmm.
My immediate instinct is to not compromise on the quality at all, right? Just
right,
because then you're just going to sell your way down to the bottom. I don't. There's something that's not the right way to go. So, you know, how to reduce your costs while still maintain that high quality. That's obviously the question that you and Mike are asking. Yes. And I would need to think about that, but my immediate instinct is do not compromise on the quality of what because you're building your tribe already. People are, you know, if you're, you know, doing 100,000 in sales, that, you know, you have a tribe, and my hope is that they're spreading the word about the quality of what you are selling. And that can only lead to growth from a marketing standpoint, you know. When things start to go south as far as the quality goes, then you're messing with your vision, with your mission, the whole enchilada, right? So I would say not to compromise on the quality. Now, how to reduce the cost, I'd have to you know, engage more in conversation with Mike, but that's my immediate reaction. I don't know what Max or Steve think.
I would just say, Brad, right now, no food euphemisms right now, because I'm getting hungry.
Yes, we're getting hungry.
It's like a big burrito that I love having while having an enchilada. That's
what for Jessica, who's on her bike right now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, is there a way for you to expand your market at all, Jessica? I know compromising quality. I agree with Brad and not wanting to lower the quality of your product, but is there a way that you can break into other markets that'll help with, you know, additionally with sales? I know your cost is still the same, but
I'm not sure.
I don't know,
like in terms of marketing, like I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I've experimented a little bit with ads, but I don't really have like ad spend. So I haven't done too much or like anything really focused.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, maybe related to Carol's question, maybe, and this would take some time and energy on your part, but developing a premier line of your clothing targeted for a higher demographic that had more money that you could charge more for, that would be comparable to the cost for the products that you're making now. But it's the premier Jessica line, if you will, right?
Okay.
I mean, something for us to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think related to that, I think because you have a tribe, as Brad mentions, I think, and I'm not sure if we discussed this or not, but we should go back and survey your tribe and see what they like, what they don't like. Are there other products they would like you to carry? Because
Mhm.
maybe there's accessories or related products that you can make a better margin on to try to kind of make up for some of the loss you're having to deal with now. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a number of moving parts, but I think it's worthwhile to reach out to them to get some data.
Jessica,
Yeah,
what's your company name?
Babe with a Dream.
Say it again.
Babe with a Dream.
Babe with a Dream. Okay.
And then I've kind of thought, because I also do, like Mike said, I do patches in China. And my cost is like, I had a patch go viral on TikTok, and my cost was like $6.95, and I retailed it for $30. So patches are what I have the best margin on. But I mean, I had that patch for like a year before it went viral. So it's like, I can't really, that's not sustainable. For me.
And then the people that buy the patches, then it's an iron-on patch or it's a sew-on patch. So they just buy the patch and then they apply it to whatever they want to apply it to.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
maybe there's a way to expand your patch sales,
Yeah.
right? Where you're not buying the denim and applying it onto the denim. You're just selling the patch.
Yeah. And I think, like, I mean, I would love for a goal to be to get into a retailer and get like a bigger wholesale order. But I just don't know how to do that either.
Okay. So
Are you currently only online now, Jessica, or do you have a storefront?
No, so I do have like smaller wholesale accounts. So I'm in a few boutiques like across the US, but it's only like select shirts. It's not like a full assortment.
Yeah, and when you said you were on the cusp, what's the deciding factor? How much net you can actually end up with so that you can keep doing this?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we looked at financials from this year compared to last, and it's like pretty much the same.
Okay.
Yeah, the expenses are pretty high. And so it's a matter of getting her sales up, right, to cover the operating expenses for the business.
Yeah, I do like the idea of a premier line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea of some sort of accessories that complement your clothing line, because we can have much higher margins on those types of things. So I do think those are worth exploring.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think Instagram is the place. I think everything I bought clothing wise for men, and this is, remember, Instagram used to be what, 80-90% female, 10-20% male at one point. This is 2-3 years ago. It's not like it's changed. but I found that, you know, just like men's stuff and stuff for like the house, like, you know, tools and stuff. I mean, it's all on Instagram. I think every purchase, I don't even go to the store. I don't have time. But when I do, oh, that looks pretty cool. I could use that little tool. I didn't know I had a tool for that.
Shop local, Max. Shop local.
But I think for you, I mean, have you talked to our Deborah in our SBDC?
I have an appointment with her.
Yeah.
Good.
So.
I think there's more opportunity for brainstorming, Jessica. I don't think it's I think there's some options to really to throw on the table there. I think there's options, and you know, Mike is very, very creative. He's really good at throwing out, you know, what ifs, which is a good thing. But just to wrap it up, I think that the idea of you're having that premier line that you were talking about, I think that's a great idea. I'd love to brainstorm more about how to reduce some of those costs, which I'm sure you've already dug in deeply with Mike about, but maybe there's a way there. And then it seems like with the patches, I don't have an answer right now, but it seems like there's a door that's been opened there, and I can't quite. I have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys saw in the chat, but Yesenia had a great idea. Is there a possibility you could get a social media influencer to showcase your products or wear your products and talk about them? I mean, I know it's probably easier said than done, but it was a good idea.
Yeah, I was, there's actually some Shopify app that you can like put in what your like specifications are, and they kind of present like a bunch of influencers that they think would be good towards your store.
Oh,
So I'm gonna look into that as like the next, to try to expand the reach outside of like what I feel like my little bubble is.
good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
You can also join your local chamber of commerce to make connections to other business owners. And we have lots of shops here in Whittier who might connect with you and feature your product. You never know. You never know. I don't know where you're located, but I'm just gonna throw
I'm in
it out.
Whittier.
I got my heating company in Instagram and they're local.
And obviously, Jessica, you're definitely spread thin. You're a mom, you're a businesswoman, you're trying to have a life. And so key thing is to figure out who to target and then come up with not an overwhelming way to target them, but something that's manageable, which I think, certainly Deborah can help you with and such. So more conversations to be had, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for your input.
Yes,
Hey,
we'll have
thanks,
to keep us
Jessica.
posted. I'm interested.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to just, I think everybody on this call knows about the SBDC, but for just, I'm just going to share my screen for a second here to let everybody know that if you want to, if you're not already a client of the SBDC, this is a no cost business advising solution for you. And it's really easy to register with us as a client. You go to the website that I have on here and you click on the red get started button, you follow the prompts, and then you'll be in the system. Then you get in touch with our office, and that's through a gentleman by the name of Dan. And Dan, you'll tell Dan I was taking this financial boot camp class, this series through Whittier, and I'd like to talk further with Steve or with Mike or with Max, or all three, just depending on what your particular need is. So it's really, really easy. This will be something that's available, this slide will be available to you through the chamber. And, we look forward to continuing to work with you, or if we haven't started working with you, we look forward to that as well. And again, it's no cost to you. And it's our great pleasure to offer as much guidance as we possibly can. So I've just put this up here on the screen, and then I'll get it to Carol, who will share it with you as well. Wanted to make sure I didn't forget to do that before we close. So before we close, does anybody have any other questions, comments, good bar jokes, anything that you want to share? Carol, did I miss anything? Are we good?
I think we're better than good. I think we're great. And, Brad, just want to thank you and Mike, Steve, Max, all of you provided some really great information over these last few weeks. And today was a great refresher course, and just really happy that we were able to add, some new things and have, Jessica even answer some of her questions as well. But you can see in the chat, everybody's getting value out of that. So just really want to thank you guys again. This has been a great boot camp, something that I think everybody needs. So I'll be happy if we can share these videos of our last 4 sessions at some point through our website for more people to see. And just one more time, just want to say thanks so much to Friendly Hills Bank for their sponsorship of this series. They are, a great local community bank, very supportive of the communities in which they are located, and they deliver solutions for your business, including financing solutions and a variety of deposit accounts and cash management tools. So if you would like more information on the services they offer, you can visit friendlyhillsbank.com. And just want to say thanks one more time to everybody. Really appreciate this, and we look forward to future collaborations with the SBDC. And for those of you who aren't chamber members, here's my plug one more time. We're here to have make our business community thrive. And we do that through multiple programs, events, services, customer service, that sort of thing. And we invite you to join us if you're not already one of our members. So with that, last parting words, Brad?
Well, thank you,
Ron,
Carol.
our chair of the board, he's
And-
awesome. Any last parting words other than that?
I just, again, thank you, Max and Steve and Mike for doing it, and Quan and Rick, thank you so much for joining. It's been great. And of course, thank you to Friendly Hills Bank. Much appreciated. So it's been good, and we'll do it again.
All right. Well, have a great week, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
All
Good
right.
night.
Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Everybody.